Welcome to Hardtalk from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm in an open-air prison known as Tent City. It's home to more than 1,000 inmates. The section I'm in right now is mostly illegal immigrants. And this place is the brainchild of my guest today, the self-styled toughest sheriff in America, Joe Arpaio. He has stoked a national controversy with his all-out campaign against illegal immigrants who are coming into the United States from Mexico, just 100 miles and more to the south. The question is his campaign riding roughshod over the US Constitution? Sheriff Joe Arpaio, welcome to Hardtalk.
Thank you.
In the last 3 years or so, you focused more and more of your time and your resources on the issue of illegal immigration. Why?
Well, first of all, you talk about resources. I did have special grants from the state legislature, so that helped out. When people talk about I waste my budget going after just illegal aliens, the reason I started focusing on this problem was that 2 new state laws were passed that no one talks about. They talk about the present controversial called the 1070 law. But we had 2 other laws passed, human smuggling and employer sanction. So I decided to enforce those laws. They happen to be felonies, most of the laws I'm talking about. So I started enforcing the human smuggling. Arrested over 2,000 people coming into our county, Maricopa County, Arizona, and we arrest the smuggler, who they call coyotes, and the co-conspirators.
And when you say co-conspirators, you regard the people who are being smuggled as co-conspirators.
Exactly. We're the only agency doing that. The county attorney has prosecuted those cases, a 94% conviction rate.
Well, why do you think no other authority regards them as co-conspirators and you do, and you lock them up? I mean, why do you think the difference is there?
You know, that's a good point. Maybe they don't care about enforcing the illegal immigration laws. Maybe the chiefs of police have to report to mayors or city councils. I don't report to anybody but the 4 million people that live in this county. I'm the elected sheriff. When you talk about other sheriffs, why they don't do it, we have 15 sheriffs total in Arizona. I don't speak for them. I speak for me, and that's what we've been doing.
And speaking for yourself, try to tell me how your attitude matches up to the words of a state senator, Russell Pierce, who's been in the forefront of the political effort to take on the illegal immigrants. He said not so long ago, he said, "It is time to circle the wagons against illegal immigrants who are responsible for a crime wave in our state and are stealing our jobs." Do you bring the same mindset to it?
Well, Russell's a former law enforcement officer. In fact, he was my chief deputy for a year when I first took office. So he has a lot of experience in law enforcement. And now he's a state senator, politician. But he's been behind many of these laws.
That's right.
Relating to illegal immigration. And they've all been upheld by other courts.
But leaving aside the legality, and we'll get to Law 1070 in a minute, but just in terms of the mindset, do you see illegal immigrants as responsible for a crime wave and for stealing jobs?
Well, you know, first of all, it doesn't matter. It's a violation of the law. I'm an equal opportunity law enforcement guy. I lock everybody up, whether it's hookers or deadbeats or animal cruelty, murders, you name it. This happens to be another law that I'm enforcing. So if it's...
But you have to prioritize. Any lawman has to prioritize because you've only got limited resources. And I just wonder why you've chosen to prioritize the immigration issue when looking at the statistics, and I'm quoting here from the Independent Immigration Policy Institute, they say, I'm quoting them, crime rates are falling in Arizona and research shows that immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than the native born.
I believe the crime rates, and not trying to take credit, nobody gives me credit anyway, but the crime has gone down in this county just about the time I started enforcing the illegal immigration laws, including crime suppression operations, where we go into a certain area and maybe arrest I'm trying to think of the figures, but let's say the average of 100 people in a 15-hour crime.
These are your sweeps.
Yeah.
Where you go into, let's be honest about it, you go into Latino communities.
No, I've gone into white neighborhoods, all different types.
Well, I know you have, but by and large, according to lots of local people I've spoken to, you go into Hispanic and Latino neighborhoods, you sweep through, you pick up people, sometimes on very trivial misdemeanors, and you then check out their immigration status.
Well, that's not true. We have hit some areas that happen to be Hispanic, but there's a high crime rate there. So we go into areas where there's a high crime rate, not just into neighborhoods. We don't go on street corners arresting people because they look like they're from another country. We don't do that. We arrest all types of violators of the law in our crime suppression, from dope peddlers to warrants. I can go on and on.
We'll get back to that because it does get to the heart of the debate right now about the law 1070 here in Arizona. But before we do, a fundamental point. Is it not the case that immigration law, defining it and implementing it and keeping America's borders safe, is a federal government responsibility, not that of the state or of local lawmen such as yourself?
Well, you know, I was a federal official for almost 28 years. I was the regional director in Mexico, South America, Texas, Arizona for the U.S. Drug Enforcement. I know where the Mexican border is. I know what the problems are in Mexico and other countries.
Sure, but it's not your responsibility as sheriff of Maricopa County.
It is my responsibility, but we have state laws that I am enforcing. I just mentioned the two laws that we are enforcing. We do have inherent authority to enforce federal laws. We do enforce the bank robberies, SFBI, guns, ATF. I can go on and on. So law enforcement does enforce federal laws in this country.
But as you know much better than me, when the federal courts, the district court, looked at the Arizona so-called SB 1070, the bill which would have brought in new powers for policing and checking immigration status of people, the district court decided that this was fundamentally a federal issue and that it blocked some of the powers that were designed to go to the police here in Arizona.
Well, that's just a district court. That's going to go on appeal. I presume it'll go up to the Supreme Court. There's been other rulings that says that the local law enforcement can enforce the federal immigration laws. So this is one judge's opinion. It hasn't affected my operations. I'm still doing the same thing I've been doing for 3 years, so nothing changes with me.
You, of course, as sheriff, are responsible for the security, the well-being of a community. You are a community figure. Does it worry you that so many figures in your own community, and I'm thinking about local officers of the National Council on Civil Liberties, La Reza, the Hispanic Legal and Human Rights Movement, they are all absolutely adamant that the way you interpret the law right now, and even more so the new law, 1070, are a fundamental violation of rights and would drive, to quote La Reza, a wedge between racial communities?
Well, first of all, if you say so many people in the community, my polls are usually 80%. So you're talking about a small group of people.
Yeah, your polls recently haven't been anywhere near 80%. The poll I saw that's most recent, your favorability rating was down to high 30s, low 40s.
No, that was 2 years ago. By a pollster, if you read the polls, it was 56%. You're talking about an old poll. Let's talk about current polls that have me over 80%. So you're going back to garbage that was printed 2 years ago, that some pollster that doesn't like me, but it doesn't matter. I know what my polls are. I know what my support is. I know all the money I have raised for my next election, millions of dollars. Evidently, someone likes what I'm doing as the sheriff.
Sure, but that's a slightly different point from actually considering the law. And I just, on that issue, it's very interesting to me that you've got a picture of you shaking hands with the President Obama there. And it does seem to me that there's the danger here of you and your supporters, other allies like Senator Pierce here in Arizona, being on a collision course with the President, who's made it quite plain that he does not believe Arizona should push ahead.
Well, you
with Law
mentioned
1070.
Obama. I'm going to have to respond to that. You see Bush underneath. I only met with Obama as a courtesy to Secret Service when a president comes into town. Would the sheriff like to meet with the president?
Of course
He
you would,
still
'cause
is
he's your-
our,
he's
he's
your
still our
president.
president.
Absolutely.
And I respect the office, and maybe we disagree on certain issues, but that doesn't matter.
Well, you do disagree, don't you? Because he also talked about this word, a wedge. He said that the Arizona law would drive a wedge between communities.
Well, I don't know about that. I've had great support with the Hispanic community. I was their hero at one time when I arrested a military reservist on a highway for putting guns at 9 people on the street because they looked like they were from Mexico. I arrested the military guy. I took a lot of heat on that. So you don't go around pointing guns at people because of what they look like. Now I'm the enemy.
You are that now, and I just want to put this quote to you because it's a very powerful one. I wonder how you react to it. Thomas Sainz, who's the president of the Mexican-American Legal Defense Fund, he says that the way you are treating the immigration issue now is very similar, comparable to what Southern sheriffs were doing in the United States in the early 1960s, refusing to bow to federal edicts, those, of course, about desegregation. Do you see any comparison in your stand?
You know, if I'm so bad, this sheriff, being in office 17 years, why would the U.S. government, Homeland Security, train 100 of my deputies and gave them authority to enforce the illegal immigration laws? Why did they do that? 100 deputies have been trained, 5 weeks of training. Why would they do that if this sheriff is so bad?
Another set of figures, it's interesting to tease out what you make of them. An analysis by a group of civil rights lawyers locally found that 70% of those that were arrested in one of the phased sweeps that you conducted in the area had Spanish surnames, and they point out that Maricopa County generally has a 31% Latino population. This was their way of saying, whatever the sheriff says, there is racial profiling going on right now in Maricopa County.
How do they know how many people we stopped? How do they know how many people we arrested? What are they taking 70%? Sometimes we do have a crime suppression operation, and the criminals, they're all violating the law that we arrest, happen to be Hispanics.
Just happen to be.
Yeah, we don't racial profile. We stop everybody. Everybody. Doesn't matter who they are. But when we stop the person, and it happens to be Hispanic, and also here illegally, we're not going to overlook that.
Would it worry you if the perception was amongst Hispanic people in your community that that actually wasn't the case?
Well, you know, they can, I think I have a lot of support from the Hispanic community, the legal people here, not the illegals.
It's not just Hispanic groups, human rights groups who aren't happy. There are even police chiefs, whom I imagine you regard as colleagues of yours, who say that your methods simply are wrong. I'm thinking of the chief of police of Mesa, George Gascon. He says that effective policing needs the cooperation of minority communities, and he says we, unlike Sheriff Joe, focus on people who are committing predatory crimes.
Really? Is he in San Francisco now? Do you know that?
Well, he was in Mesa when he said that.
No, I'm going to tell you, no, that's his philosophy, right? Why is he going around locking people, hanging around street corners or on buses that are poor people? He says he only goes after violent criminals.
He says that there's a fundamental issue. You have to establish trust beteen communities in modern America, and you have failed to do that.
Really, I have a lot of trust with the community, big time. I have a hotline, 8,000 calls I got in the hotline to report illegal immigration violation. Where do you think all the information comes from? Illegal aliens. That's how we get our information. Where do you think you get information on dope peddlers? You get it from people involved in drug trafficking or use of drugs. No, I get a lot of information. This is a cop-out by police chiefs that they're worried that the police will be mistrust with the Hispanic community. It won't give them any information. It takes a lot of resources, yet they can go after hookers and go after task force with no seatbelt And when 53% of the people in my jails, booked by all police agencies, are small crimes, so don't tell me that they only concentrate on big-time crimes and violence. The cop-out is this. They have to report to politicians, they have to report to city councils, city managers, and they don't like to enforce the illegal immigration laws because some people want amnesty in this area in this country.
Well, I think, if I may, that one of the reasons that Gascon was not happy with you was because you took one of your now very well-known posses into his neighborhood. And he told you not to, but you did it anyway. He described it as a deeply dangerous situation.
First of all, you ought to study the Constitution. I'm the elected sheriff of this whole county. I can go anywhere I want in this county. He was not doing the job on illegal immigration, so I did it. And I have the authority as the elected chief law enforcement officer to do that. Maybe he should have been doing the job instead of going to bed with all these activists hanging around in their bars and raising money against me.
As a highly respected lawman, and you've been decorated and saluted all across the United States of America.
The world.
The
world.
How come that you are also facing a host of legal investigations of your own?
Well, I guess when you're high profile, a lot of people don't like you, whether it's the political arena or not. You do get people that look into your activity. That's nothing new.
Well, it's nothing new, but it is quite extraordinary in your case because you seem to have upset so many people in your own neighborhood. The mayor of Phoenix says that you've been conducting a reign of terror. A whole host of local officials accuse you of abusing your power to investigate them. There's a federal grand jury investigation, not just of whether you violated the U.S. Constitution in terms of the stuff we've talked about, your policing methods with minority groups, but also allegations of systematic abuse of your powers locally.
Well, that's not true either. We cooperate with the grand jury. I've been a federal official for 30 years. I know how the federal government operates. I've been around a long time. So they can have their investigations. I'm not concerned about it because I know we
shouldn't
run.
you be concerned about
because
it?
I know
the people of this city be concerned about it?
No, well, they don't seem to be. I'm going to mention again my polls, and every day I'm hit in the headlines every day. It doesn't bother the people of this county. They read through all this garbage.
Again, it's a question of what the mindset says about your attitude to law enforcement. I mean, behind you, I can see the board, which is about the conditions in your tent city, and it goes into the hard labor, it goes into the pink underwear that you force your prisoners to wear. And of course, many of them are in tents in temperatures that are well beyond 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
130 today.
Absolutely. The question is it your intent to dehumanize, to humiliate the prisoners that you are responsible for?
Well, you see, I'm an old-fashioned guy. I'm a senior citizen. I remember when I grew up that you do something wrong, you take away privileges. They even used to punish. Remember they used the word punishment? If you do something wrong...
Sure, but if I may interrupt, and forgive me for doing it, I know it's rude, but I should point out quite a number of the people in your tent city, for example, are not convicted of a crime. They're waiting for trial.
Everybody in tent city is convicted. Once again, you're reading the wrong garbage. They're all convicted. Everyone. I put those tents up in 1993. Korean War tents. 17 years this month we celebrated our anniversary. Our men and women fight for our country. In Iraq, in Afghanistan, they live in tents. Everybody in those tents have been convicted.
But these conditions,
doing their time.
These conditions, including the pink underwear, including and you've been very proud to say it, the fact that you only feed your prisoners 2 meals a day, and to quote you, it costs more to feed the dog than the prisoners.
No, we have dogs in jail too. I put dogs in jail that have been abused. You're right. It costs around 50 cents a day to feed the inmates, $1 a day.
So I come back to the point. Some of the prisoners under these conditions have yet to be convicted.
Everybody in the tents have been convicted. Yeah, but the others have not been convicted.
Sure, and these conditions apply whether they're in the tents or not. And I'm just asking you whether that seems to you to be acceptable.
Of course it is. They get to 2,500 calories. It's just not pizza with pepperoni or steak, like in some countries, or television, or smoking, or coffee. I can go on, and porno, I can go on and on. I took all that away. Took it away, and I've survived everything on that. I've been sued when I took away the porno. I won that case. I was sued when I took away the coffee, won that case. So where's all the problems?
Here's a big picture thought for you. The Hispanic community is the fastest growing in the United States. They're going to, well, I think they are the biggest minority community, and their numbers are on the rise with a higher birth rate than pretty much any other minority community in this country. So the Republican Party, if it is to form a ruling coalition in the future, needs Hispanic, Latino votes. Come back to the question, are you helping the party reach out to that community?
I have no idea. I just lock them up. I don't care what they are. It has nothing to do with politics. And I think the Republican Party would like their sheriff to lock anybody up, everybody, whether Italian or Turkish or whatever. So that's the philosophy, and they believe in that. So it doesn't bother me if anybody says I'm locking up Hispanics. I'm locking everybody up.
And you, of course, very proud of your roots. Your family's Italian. They were, in their day, immigrants themselves to the United States. I know you're going to tell me they were legal immigrants to the United States. It's a fair point.
You've been listening to other shows.
It's a fair point. But in the end, your history is part of the rich American immigrant experience. Again, on a personal level, does it strike you as strange that you've pitched up in a job where so much of what you do seems to be about stopping immigrants making a life in America?
No, this has been going on for 3 years when the new laws were passed. I'm doing my job. Before that, I did had other priorities. So I don't know. That's my job. I took an oath of office to enforce all the laws. I lived in Mexico City. I used to deal with the president, attorney general. I got along great in Mexico and working with Noriega in South America.
Yeah, you wouldn't get on great with the current president of Mexico, who's accused Arizona and by extension.
No, I disagree with him.
Yeah, you disagree with him.
He should stick his nose out of our business. I know the secrets in Mexico, having lived there in Mexico City for 4 years. He's got his own problems, and he ought to worry about his own problems and not the United States. Look at his immigration laws. Look at his prisons. Look at his corruption. So he ought to be looking at himself, not the United States of America.
Final thought, and it comes back to something we discussed earlier. If there has to be a collision between the federal government and forces here in Arizona who want to pursue a different agenda when it comes to immigration policy, are you ready for that collision?
I'm ready for anything. Hey, you want to wipe all the laws off the book? It's okay with me. As long as the laws are there, I'm going to enforce it.
And if
they're not there, I'm not going to enforce it.
And if the feds intervene to tell you can't do it the way you've been doing it?
Well, if they can, if that could be proven, and the law says, justifies what they say, the law, and of course I won't do it. I've survived 17 years. I hate to use the word survive, but I've been getting shots at me for 17 years. You do know that. And people wonder, why do you keep doing it, Sheriff? You don't make that much money. You don't want to be the governor. And when I leave, you won't be interviewing me. You'll forget my name. So why do I do this? What objective? Because I'm getting a little publicity? Is that why? I don't need this. So what is my reason? I ask myself that. You're not going to ask me.
I'm waiting for the answer.
Well, it's a tough answer.
And what is it?
But the answer is this. When I go on the streets and everybody comes up to me, almost everybody, and they say, thank you, Sheriff. Thank you for what you're doing. That motivates me. And as long as they keep saying thank you, I'll keep going.
It's time for me to say thank you.
Thanks
for being on Hardtalk.
Thank you.
Sheriff Joe Arpaio, thank you very much.